just to summarise what I think will be most useful and how I want to break it up tonight is to talk for about 15 minutes on basically what I think are a few tips if you're going into the field or going into the industry, how to be a good social journalist. And I want that section to be more focused on, I guess, the hunt for a job, because it has never been easier to set yourself apart from the field and get noticed as it is in the world of social media. So I just put together a couple of tips for that. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry, I haven't got decks for that part of it, but I'll go through and talk about that. And I want to talk there a little bit about live tweeting, because I think a few years ago that was something that not many people did. And now a lot of people are doing it. Basically anyone who has access to something like Sky or News24 can live tweet anything, but there's a skill to doing it really well and setting yourself apart. Then I'm going to spend about 10-15 minutes talking about TweetDeck. Does anyone use TweetDeck here already? Great, okay, so there's a few people that kind of know a bit of it. Talking briefly about using TweetDeck for journalism. It's got some really powerful tools in there to try and find content for you and find contacts. And I've used it quite a few times to kind of get a few coups and get ahead of the rest of Australian journalists, in a couple of cases, world stories, to try and find content before others do. And then I'm going to speak briefly about Facebook, and then just very briefly a couple of search tools there, because Facebook's just implemented a change in their search system that makes it really easy to stalk people, which is good for journalism, so I'll talk about that. And then I want to spend the last bit, I think I've added up my timings wrong, but the last 15 minutes talking about verification. Because in this world of anyone can be a publisher, it's never been easier for people to fake and mislead, and also people to get way too excited about things. So I'm just going to give you a few pretty simple but basic tips. The first few minutes I wanted to talk about is how some ways to kind of get ahead and get noticed, because I think one of the most useful things that I found, first I'm going to talk about a bit about me and how I kind of got to where I am now. So I studied at UOW, started in 2007 and did a double degree with a Bachelor of Journalism and a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in Asia Pacific Studies. And in about, I think it was 2007, 2009, 10, at the start of 2010, applied for the ABC internship program, which is kind of one of the pathways, I guess, into the cadetship program. It's kind of more that you're studying at university, how can you get into the ABC? So I was meant to do a 4-week internship at Lateline, but I'm a massive overcommitter to things, and ended up burning myself out midway through the year and said, hey, I really would love to go to Late Time, but I can't quite do it now, can I come back and do something else? Ended up going to ABC News 24 in November of 2010, which was fantastic timing because the channel had only launched a few months before. So was there for 4 weeks, and at the end was precocious enough to go, hey, can I please stay around, even if it's unpaid, and got some casual work off the back of that. I think I did AutoCue for about a month, which is the rolling text in the studio, and then went as a web producer to a general news producer, and then started specialising in social media. But I've been following social media probably since I started at university. And I remember the piece of paper in my O-Week bag that says, hey, you should join this thing called Facebook and get involved, and that's how we're talking now, and I guess, as they say, the rest is history. So started researching a bit of social stuff and went to a couple of conferences in university. Before that, my lesson from that story is, with doing the internship at News24, I was so humbled when I kind of left. They said, hey, I spoke to the EP and said, hey, can I hang around? He's like, I've had about nearly everyone in the newsroom say, we want you to stay. So I guess my example from that is, social media was in its more of an infancy a few years ago, but there are still a lot of people in newsrooms that don't quite understand how it works and the nuances of being an expert on social, and it's a really powerful way to get a job. So it's that kind of thing of being really comfortable in being a digital native when you're looking for jobs. Because I kind of walked into the newsroom and was that guy that knew how to use Photoshop, knew how to search for stuff on Twitter, knew how to use TweetDeck, knew how to kind of download photos quickly off Facebook and things like that. So I attribute that a large part to how I kind of got my job there. So I think that's a really good tip, is use your time here to turn into a bit of a digital native or a digital addict, and it will definitely work in your favour. In specific to social, I thought of like 4 points about kind of how to get noticed and how to get ahead, which might be useful. The first one I think is really important, and it's what we always do when we think about a social media strategy around an event, a channel, a network, whatever it might be, is think strategically about presences. And I guess an example of how people don't do this is when you're kind of on Twitter and you see people have, you know when you post a photo on Instagram and it gives you all the options at the end of where you want to share it to? I think that's an example of maybe not thinking as strategically as one could. So I encourage you, I mean, even if you're just doing it for your personal self, think about how you're going to use every platform that you're on. One of the most frustrating things about Instagram now is Twitter has changed the way they display Instagram links so it doesn't expand when you're scrolling through a timeline. So you just see that, hey, this is a really cool photo of my pug dog, and then there's a link and it doesn't expand. That's a pet peeve of mine. So think about what I guess that's an anecdote to say is think strategically about what content you post where and how that reflects on yourself, because every employee now, unless they're stupid, will be Googling your name to find what your presence is and what it is. So for example, with something like Twitter, Twitter has established itself as, I guess, the go-to platform for breaking news, for news stories and developing news. So I guess it's a no-brainer that you would use your presence there as more of a getting ahead in your reporting, what you're doing now in your student journalism, and building those connections, starting to follow the right people, starting to build lists. I'll talk a bit more about that later, but becoming, I guess, an expert at your interest area is a really powerful way. So if you're really interested in a particular area, build a list around it and occasionally tweet that out and say, hey, I've got a list around this topic. Really powerful, for example, if there happens to be a breaking story on your beat and you can say, hey, I've already got a list of something like that, and people can open that and just follow what's going on, because in those breaking news environments, people look for that filter to the fire hose of content that just is pouring in. Facebook, I guess some people might go, well, why would I have it? We have a lot of journos at the ABC, for example, that go, well, why would I use Facebook professionally? But Facebook's made it really easy to use it professionally. So I've turned on a follow function. So if you go to my Facebook page and click follow, you'll get a public stream of what I'm posting, or I can specify whether my friends see it. That's another way just to get your content on the web, because one of the, I guess, the most important metrics is we're still in that era of using Google for everything kind of going, if you ever tried to Google your name in inverted commas, there are so many easy ways in the social world to get your name and your content up there really high. I remember when I first kind of started doing stuff on social, if you search Andrew Moon, I think there's a quarterback in the United States, which couldn't be farther from the truth about what I'm about, and an orchestral player of some kind in Perth, again, area I don't know anything about. But what you can do with social, so if you have a strong LinkedIn presence, you have I guess a public Facebook site, you're just getting more content to the web, that more positive brand that people can find you with. So Facebook can be used for that kind of thing too. So you might post interesting articles you're finding around the place, more that, I guess that's what I use mine for. I guess if you had a spectrum of professional and personal, Facebook's sitting more kind of on the personal side of what I will share. So I'll be sharing stuff that is of really personal interest to me. LinkedIn, is anyone on, who's on LinkedIn? Awesome. LinkedIn is really powerful in terms of, if you do it well, of pushing your name really high in Google search results. And it is totally worth your time in doing it well. What you can do here is you can write a nice little summary about yourself. Don't rip your first part off your resume to do that. Actually write it out and think about, I'm not sending a resume, this is my LinkedIn. This is the first taste that people are getting of me. So I've had a bit of fun with mine and said basically I get paid to spend too much time on the internet, which I'm perfectly okay with. So I'm showing more of a personal side now that I've kind of jumped out of news. You can put links in there to articles you've got. A really powerful thing is recommendations. Like, it's such a cool tool that it's free. And employers actively using that. Using this, obviously, I've got mates that have found jobs just by looking at the job listings on LinkedIn. So if you don't have something there, absolutely get something up there. This endorsement skill is a bit of a meh. But you can really easily put everything there, and these recommendations are great because it's basically written references that you would find in the resume. So definitely think about LinkedIn, and LinkedIn is all about Facebook is kind of, there was this great graphic that I was trying to find today, but I couldn't find it, about what people share and what it says about you. And Facebook, we often share what we want people to think we are. And LinkedIn is great to share things if you want to share. It's more the, I guess, the aspirational side, a bit of the business interest, interesting thought leadership about journalism is some of the good stuff you can share there, and you can chuck your work on there too. Instagram, not to be yourself, it's harder to find people on Instagram, I guess, but with every social platform, treat it as if someone will find it and is looking for your content. So I say be personal, but let's not go putting anything too dangerous up there. SoundCloud, if you're interested in, anyone interested in radio journalism as a kind of specialty? Yeah, cool. The great thing about Instagram is really good way to put your content up there. Remember, of course, if you're doing interviews, you need to let people know that it's going on a public platform. But if you post an Instagram, SoundCloud link onto Facebook, it actually displays it beautifully. So you've got a bright, big photo, and it plays natively really nicely in Facebook. So it's a really nice way to share your content, and people can add it to playlists, etc. So that's my first thing, thinking strategically about presences. I guess the second one is play to your strengths. And this is the thing about, I remember when I first kind of started jumping onto Twitter, and I was kind of, hadn't quite found my interest areas. I was kind of going, oh, I should be an expert at this and that too. You are just kind of setting yourself up for failure if you try and kind of jump in there and kind of try and be an expert on everything. The great thing about social media and the democracy of social media is anyone can be an expert if they've got good content. And there's some great examples of people that you find these great accounts and go, okay, that's a 12-year-old powering that, but it's someone who's really interested. So do spend a bit of time thinking about what your interests are and how that you could reflect that on social, because I think that's actually another really powerful way. I mean, if you love sport and you're into footy, I mean, you're going to do really well at that kind of content because it's what you care about. So yeah, own that space and be a thought leader. And I guess what I mean by thought leadership is that idea of you're always thinking about the cutting or the bleeding edge of that particular field or industry. And that's a really good way to get noticed. Start injecting yourself into conversations. So have your lists of people you want to follow and start jumping in with @replies into conversations. It's another really easy way to get noticed. And then I want to talk here about live tweeting. So everyone kind of gets what live tweeting is, right? So it's kind of the basic, I guess, definition is you are tweeting a number of tweets on a particular topic or an event over a short span of time. The great thing about live tweeting is it's an amazing way to get noticed. Twitter actually have come out and said, if you're live tweeting an event or whatever it is, your follower growth pretty much is 1.5 times or 50% more of what it normally would be. So it's a really quick way to get noticed and boost your followers, because people are kind of going, okay, there's this big event on, and I'm sitting there going, what accounts am I going to follow, and who's this account that keeps popping up? I've done it for a number of different things, but one example I think of was I talk about sucker for punishment on a day off, but I left my phone on loud one night, and about 4 AM I got an AP alert saying there's been a bombing in Boston at a marathon. And that's actually, it was just an explosion, so I didn't know what it was. So I was kind of tweeting for about 12 hours that day, or just was kind of addicted to my laptop going, okay, I need to keep in touch with the developments. But really big boost to my followers. And I was kind of sitting there, it was a really interesting study in how the Twitter sphere moves and how social media moves. And that kind of wave, that event was particularly interesting, of the wave of misinformation, correction, hold back, keep going. And that's Kath Viner, who's the editor of The Guardian Australia here, made a really smart comment, which if you look up a talk she did at Melbourne University, I think it was about, I want to say 2 months ago, don't quote me on that in live tweets, but she did this talk about how, saying we are in an era now, I mean, before the printing press, all of how we spread stories was all about basically hearsay and gossip. Then became the printing press and this idea of an absolute truth. You can go and get the paper and you could know that was factual, that was accurate, that was correct at the time of printing. Now we're in this era again where it's a lot of gossip, it's a lot of very fast moving stories. And I find that area with social very interesting because I don't think we've all quite adjusted. Thankfully now more, in the last couple of years, it used to be a bit more like, oh my God, this person's made an error, they've stuffed up. But people understand now that social is an interesting battlefield and it's a race to kind of be first more than ever, but there is that space for corrections and that kind of thing. So I think that's really interesting. I've gone off on a tangent there, as you can see. With live tweeting, the point that I guess I raised a little bit earlier was every man and their dog can live tweet as long as they have a TV. If you're ever watching a really handy website, if you are kind of live tweeting something and it's live tweeted on TV, is this website called tveater.com, and this gives you a live transcript of all the TV channels. This is a random side note. But with tools like this, and access to TV or whatever, everyone can live tweet. So it's a confusing field, it's a very busy field, I should say. So I think it's really important to think about what you can add to the conversation. And value adding, that's exactly what I tell the journos of ABC News when they are thinking about this or they're learning is, what can you add to the conversation? I love those tweets where you're in the middle of a speech and then someone does that gold tweet of going, here's the comments that person made last year which directly contradicted what they're saying now. So start to think about, if you're watching something, you go, oh, I remember a story about that. That's the kind of thing you can inject into a conversation when you're live tweeting, which adds so much value. I always tell our guys to be transparent. Tell people you're not there on the scene. Tell people if you are there on the scene, your battery's about to go flat. Because the worst thing is someone starts live tweeting and something suddenly just goes off the radar. So just be clear about those kind of things. I guess every one of these has a camera and an audio recorder, apps like AudioBoo, SoundCloud, things like that. Think about other multimedia you can add to the live tweeting spectrum if you're there, and even if it's something kind of a small story like, it might be much more a hyper-local story if you're still kind of, if it's a university story you might be doing whatever, but you can still use that concept and practice now, I guess before you jump into the real world, although we're all in the real world, so that's probably a stupid statement. And I guess the other point we always talk about is additional observations. So what can you see that someone who's on Twitter at home can't see? What can you smell? Like, if you're at a bushfire, at a conference, like what are you seeing around you? How is the weather changing? Just be hyper observant. That adds so much to when someone's live tweeting something. I am running out of time already. Prepare before you leave. There's great cases you can get for these guys, which can double the battery size of it and give you battery life. Think about things like that. Golden tip if you're live tweeting something is if you're going to a press conference or something, learn who's going to be there, write the names in your notes app on your phone, and just so you can literally go select all, copy, paste into a tweet, copy all the links. When I used to work at News24, at the start of every social media shift, I just wrote down, watch live, blank, link, and just had all that ready so you could just quickly copy and paste it. So pre-write whatever you can and have interesting facts at the ready. If you know you're going to be live tweeting something, do as much research as you can beforehand. Source, that's a golden rule in social. Like if you just source as much as you can and be really, really wary of using anything without sourcing. And I think that's more the general, I guess, the nice manners of existing on social media is don't just retweet something without indicating where you got it from. Really kind of make that extra effort to find the original source of something. Yes, so that's part of number 2, which is play to your strengths. Number 3 out of 4 is, I guess, organise to get ahead. And this comes back to that point about lists. You can use lists to organise people, accounts, organisations. So for example, this is one I've done, because I'm now international, of basically a bunch of people that I know from ABC International that are on Twitter. So I've got 34 members, and I can click here, I can either see the feed of tweets from them, or I can flick here and see who are the members I've got in this list. But do the same thing on Facebook. Start to organise your interest areas. You can bring up a list and just see, you click on your interests as they're called, and you can just see posts from those accounts. People can subscribe to it. Really good thing is, if you want to follow a page for a news story or something, but you don't want to kind of like it and get them in your feed, you can actually add them to a list without liking the page, so they're not going to jump in your news feed. So the same thing is there on Facebook. Buffer enables you to basically, you write your post in here, and it will automatically schedule it across a day at preset times. So it will send out posts, and maybe you might do 4 things to Facebook, and it will push them out at like 9:05, 12:15, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and 9 o'clock at night. So that's a tool you can use to kind of spread out your posts a bit. Obviously with something like with TweetDeck you can also schedule posts, but I do say if you're scheduling content, keep it in the back of your mind you've got it scheduled, because there are a number of great examples where what's happened is the news organisations have scheduled posts on a weekend or late at night, and it's suddenly become incredibly insensitive when a story's changed. So be mindful of things like that, but Buffer Exam is a really useful tool and it's free, ta-da! But don't post the same thing everywhere. There's nothing more frustrating than someone who just posts the exact same links on every account. Think about mixing it up and strategically what's good to have where. On your phone, never been easy to have a really powerful apps that are particularly useful. The great thing with something like Twitter is it started by not having an official app, so there's a number of apps out there that actually do Twitter but better than Twitter does. I have an iOS phone, so I'm not totally sure of Android. A really good one I've heard of is Thunderbird, but I use Tweetbot on my phone. The reason I use something like Tweetbot is I can manage a bunch of our work accounts at the same time as my personal one. It's just a quick switch to flick between them. It also enables you to just flick really easily between conversations, have a number of different searches set up. The Twitter app I think has gotten a lot better, but I personally use Tweetbot. So that's how to get ahead. Spend the time making those lists so you are organised, and when something happens you can go, I'm already set up all over this. And the fourth one is build a powerful browser, and I guess that's part of being an organised, but I personally really like Chrome, and I have a bunch of extensions there that make my job so much easier. So for example, and these are all extensions you can get by kind of hitting a settings button and going to settings and then going to extensions, but one thing I use, and anyone that kind of says, and I've heard it heaps of times of going, oh, I posted on Facebook and my Facebook's private, so no one's going to find it. Guys. But the great thing is with something like, one of my favourite, it's a funny account, that one. One of my favourite things is something called Awesome Screenshot, and this is the tool that basically I can go click. Let's go again. So I can go here, I can capture a part of the page. I'm just going to zoom out a bit, but I can actually save it as a screenshot. That's particularly useful with things. So I can go crop, thanks, got it, and save to my computer. And you can save that to your desktop. So that's Awesome Screenshot. That's very, very useful. Other ones I've got here is this really cool extension called LastPass, which is basically a password security thing. The reason I have this is because I can't remember about 40 different account passwords. But what it enables you to do is basically securely lock in all your account passwords. And that's really useful for social media accounts, not having the same password for everything. So that's a little security tool. I like having I'm quite lazy, so if I kind of say I have to upload a photo to Pinterest or something, I'm like, not going to happen. But I've got a button here where I can just pin it really quickly. I can buffer a page to the app I showed you before. That's really handy. Anyone use Pocket on your phone? Great app. What it does, basically, if you're lazy like me, or I'll read an article on my phone and go, how do I read that later? You hit Pocket, it saves the article, and then it displays it really neatly in an app on your phone or iPad, and it saves it to a web interface, and it removes the formatting of the page, so it reads just like an ebook on your phone. Really handy app. Yes, and then I have ad blocker to stop ads on websites. Oh, awesome app. So that's, I guess, my fourth tip on using your browser to make your job a lot easier and a lot faster. And that's a great thing about Chrome. So what I've talked now about is 97 tweets. You guys are good. Is TweetDeck. Does anyone? So just again, users of TweetDeck. Yeah, cool. A few. So TweetDeck basically enables you to power up what you do on Twitter using the idea of lists or columns. So when you first sign in, this is basically what it looks like. So that's my home feed. You can see there just what I'd find if I went to twitter.com. But what you can do is set up a number of columns so you can monitor a bunch of things at once. So if you click this add column button, you kind of go, you know what, I want to have one that's mentioning, I'm going to boost my ego if I look about how many mentions there are of my name. And there's the mentions column. And then you can set up another one, but these are all the kind of tools you can, columns you can add. So I'm actually thinking, all right, this story is just broken. Well, one that I use all the time is having a breaking news column up. So I've got a number of sources that I've put together that are basically breaking news outlets for global news. So I might have that one up. I would encourage everyone out of the session just to jump on TweetDeck and play around. So you can really quickly add a bunch of columns, right? So if I add more, I'll just add more to freak it out a bit. Let's add that. What time is it? 6:35. Oops. The other thing is you can quickly move them around. So if you're going, okay, I really want to monitor that right now, you can move that column back and forward, and I use that all the time if I'm kind of sitting there going, oh, this story is just broken, I'll scroll the most important column up close. So TweetDeck is awesome in that regard, but it's got a lot more functionality. One of them is if you want to search for something. So if you're kind of going, all right, let's do something fun. So you can kind of go, my housemate got me addicted to pugs. You can hit enter. So this is the same you'll get with if you go to search.twitter.com, and you'll have the same functionality. But these are these extra filters which will just make your life so easier. So the first thing is content. So you think of a story is just broken, and I've got examples of this. I should use a better example. Let's go Parliament. Actually, no, let's go Ozpol and see how we go. So following Ozpol, obviously the main federal political tag. Let's pretend this is a breaking story for the sake of this. Use this content tab, and the most common example I used this was at News24. It's a visual medium, right? Something's broken, I need pictures from the scene. Hit there, ta-da, and you can just search by images. So that is only going to pull up tweets that have image links in them. So a really powerful way to just get images from the scene, for example. You can do the same with video, you can do any media, but I think those first two are really useful. You can get rid of words. So if you're doing a search for something and you go, oh, I'm sick of people talking about whatever it might be, you minus, let's just go, actually don't need to minus there because it's the exclude one already. And you might mention any tweets that include the word Canberra. It's probably going to filter out a fair few here. You can exclude retweets. So really quickly you can see if this is a breaking story or this is a story, how can I filter the content that I'm getting? You can then go to this users tab and you can search by specific users. So you might look, I want to see this person that's tweeting a story. I only want stuff from verified users. That's a really useful way. If you use the verified use filter to kind of see, I'm hearing about this story, but is it legit? You can actually go and look if any verified accounts are mentioning it. Still not an absolute confirmation, but another way you can get around those tools. Now, this is the way that TweetDeck does it, and you kind of go, okay, well I can filter by images, I can filter by video. There's a whole lot more things you can do. So if you go to search.twitter.com, and if you can't tell I'm a nerd already, then you'll find out shortly. You can click this thing called Use Operators. What I could do, for example, here is Avico. So there's been, this is a really good example actually. So ICAC, obviously, big story that constantly in the news, particularly last week. But I only want stuff that's been sent near Sydney. So I want local sources. So you can use this tag near, to get results from that area. One great example in real world of using this tool is we got reports in the newsroom one day that a passenger train had crashed into a train station in suburban Brisbane, in the suburb of Cleveland. So for that story, and this isn't going to work because those tweets have passed, it was a couple of years ago now. So I kind of sat at my computer and went, okay, so I know that I want tweets that mention the word Cleveland, and then I want to do Cleveland, then I did near Brisbane, And you can also use within. So you can go 100 km, and then I think it was filter equals images. Let me just double check that because I haven't used that one for a while. Filter is length, I think it was filter image or images, don't quote me exactly on that. But then I was really quickly, I just set up a search on that. So basically, let's say for example, we'll do that search. I don't suspect there'll be anything. There you go, there is. Add column. Bang, your search is there for you to monitor. I had that column open, and lo and behold, about 2 minutes later, a community newspaper, I think it was the Bayside Bulletin, uploaded a photo of that train crashing into the platform. So I'll go, great, there's the first picture. And then start the process of verification. So that's another awesome part of TweetDeck. And the other thing is, if you happen to be at a point where you might be managing a number of different accounts, you can quickly go here. So I'll show you on my other accounts. This is my work one. So basically, if I hit tweet, I can choose from about 7 accounts. So you can add a number of accounts there. This is why my brain is fried, because I have so many accounts hooked up to everything. So that's advanced search on Twitter. Play around with this stuff, and next time there's a big story that breaks, try this tool and try using some of these operators, using your near filters, using your image filters, and you'll be really impressed at what content it brings up. So that's how you can use it there. Another example we used it for was, for example, a constant story, I guess, was there was this story of unrest in Cairo in Egypt. So and we needed to get people on the ground that could talk to us on News 24. So I just did a search looking for near Cairo, and then used a language filter. So in TweetDeck you can actually specify what language you want the tweets to be in. So I filtered for English because I wanted kind of foreign journalists or photojournalists there, and I think I did an image search to get photos, and I was able to DM those people. Or I guess that's a really good point when you find people on Twitter and go, I'd really like to talk to you. I've initiated that exchange and going, hi, we're doing it, and reply to them. So at Joe Blogs, hi, I'm Andrew, I'm with ABC TV in Australia. Can you follow so I can DM you about speaking on TV or something like that? Establish that connection, we both follow each other, then we can direct message. Oh, the other cool thing is Facebook. Sorry. This is a really cool thing to check out. This is just announced, I think it was yesterday or today. This is FB Newswire. This is a collaboration between Facebook and Storyful. Storyful is basically, they call themselves the newsroom for the social age, I should say. So what this is now is basically they're going out here and saying, here's the story, here's the hashtags you should follow, here's photos around the story. Storyful are experts at verifying social content, and I've kind of got a few tips from them. So this page is really useful to follow, and they hopefully will do some kind of thought leadership around content and how to check it out. But you can also see they're already there doing a bunch of stories. Getting off track again. The other thing is searching on Facebook used to be really crap. Has anyone used Graph Search before? Oh, prepare to be amazed. So basically what you can do on Facebook now is, Facebook lets you search really easily / creepily for people's publicly available information. So I can go here, people who like ABC News and live in Brisbane, Queensland, Australia. Yeah, I want that one. Confirm. And like Triple J. And that is searching. These are my friends at the top who I'm friends with, but this is all people that I had no idea who they are, and it's giving you that information. Useful for finding contacts on Facebook. You can just keep adding operators and just kind of hone a search down, but the mind boggles at how powerful something like that could be. So play around with that, impress your friends, scare your friends with how much information you can get about them. That's Facebook Graph Search. The next bit is verifying content, because my God, it's like the main thing if you're playing on social and news. Misinformation and rumours can spread so much faster than the truth, so I think it is our role as journalists in social media to help the public understand and know what is truth and what is wrong. This tweet I love. I saw this exchange one day. What's the reason behind sharing fake photos? To catch people in the media out. People love to catch the media out because they're seen as the voice of authority. This actually came out around Hurricane Sandy time, and I'll show you an example of a piece of fake media around that. But it's never been easy to fool someone, so I think it's a really good public service as journalists if we're out there going, I think that sounds wrong, let me check it out. And maybe I can kind of tweet them and say, hey guys, did you know this was wrong? I got to do that to a really big news organisation one day in Australia. It was a kind of cool moment. Hey, that photo's wrong. And they deleted it. So what I'm going to talk about here is social media accounts. And this mainly talks about Twitter. Actually, I think it entirely does. But you can use some of the tools for other platforms in different ways. So verifying the accounts, verifying photos, and then we'll talk about verifying the content of tweets, I guess, and then we'll look briefly at video. But there's some really good tools to make this a lot easier. So the first one is accounts. Now this was, I think, leadership spill number 2, I want to say. And this came out about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Folks, I'll be putting my name on the ballot paper for leadership. It's time to get our party under control. Now, if this was screaming through your feed, do you think this would stop you to make you pay attention? I think so. Is there anything there that you would look at now and go, not entirely sure?
You got an underscore.
Good one, yes. Underscore. Anyone else?
Hasn't got it.
Yes. So there's a couple of things here, but these are all things that you would recognise if you're on social, if you're on Twitter and you're used to what the other official account might be. But you could fool people really easy by something like this, especially if you're looking at a feed and that's screaming past in your feed and you're going to go, whoa, that's legit. Bunch of journos got caught by that. A lot of people did. That's 416 retweets. So that was an example, and this was, so I want to run through a bunch of checks here. The first one is check their name and bio. If you see something big like that, it takes you 2 seconds to click through and have a look at that profile page. And this is what you came to. Self-proclaimed Messiah, former PM in One Century Media, not affiliated with Kevin Rudd. That took 5 seconds, 5-10 seconds to do, and you immediately went, great, that's not legit. But 5 seconds have potentially saved you a lot of embarrassment. When you're powering like a news organisation's account, it saved a lot of embarrassment. The second one is search using the full name. So you you might have used this on Twitter or on Facebook. When you search for someone, you get about 5 different examples. And this is actually the old Twitter search view, but you search for them and Twitter will actually give you, if you see this, warning sign, there's a bunch of accounts there, particularly if you're looking for someone famous, but Twitter will try and suggest the top person that it thinks you're searching about. So you can use the search, you just go to the top and go, Kevin Rudd, and that's the results it gave me. So I quickly see which is the best account to follow. Follower numbers is a really good tool. If you're kind of familiar of what the relative number of followers should be for that account. So as you can see, very big difference in followers, but this is all relative to the area. So for example, when I was doing a list of people around the WA election, the numbers were a lot smaller for state politicians over in Western Australia. But you can use those kind of things to see, is this the real deal? And Twitter's verified a lot more accounts. Now they've got a presence in Australia, they're a lot better at kind of verifying local politicians, celebrities, etc. Who is following it? So this is going to test me if this is still the same way to get to it in the new layout. Let's, for example, go. Actually, let's go. Yeah, let's use that example. Still got the old profile. Not quite cool, Kevin. You can look who's following it, and you can kind of. Where's the way? This has changed on me.
You're looking for 100 others. People that you're following, that's following you.
Yeah, well, so you can start to. I think that
Yeah.
this is a little tweak. I love when this happens in training. Here's the view I want. So you can see followers that you know that are following that account. So that's a really good way to quickly see who are the people following that account that I also follow. So I looked at the real account, and then you've got like Insiders, the feed, and another producer for ABC News 24. So that's a really good way to kind of see if that's a legit account. And check the content. It takes you another 5 seconds, I guess, to scroll through and look at other tweets, such as this one. But a lot of people won't do this. They'll just kind of see a tweet come in and go, that's legit, retweet. And it can cost you dearly. So that's a quick... None of these individual steps in that 5 are foolproof, but together it's a very powerful way to see if an account is legit. So there are the tips. Check the name, search using the full name, follow numbers, who's following it, check the content. Photos. I love checking the photos. So this came out during Hurricane Sandy. Awesome photo. Totally fake. So this was a combination of 2 photos. One was from this section, I think was from a storm about 3 years earlier, but it just went crazy. And that was what that initial tweet about, why do people try and fake photos, this was in relation to this. Has anyone used reverse image search or know what I'm talking about when I mentioned that before? Oh, cool. So, for example, and this is another extension that you must install. It's got a slightly different name. Search by image. What this tool means when you install it is you can go search Google with this image, and it will then, instead of you typing in a word and searching for it, it will search actually using that image. So say for example you see a kick-ass photo that's just been shared on social. The annoying thing with that view is it's not rendering it as an image file. Let's get my way around this. Well, let me do that. Yes, there you go. There's a photo that I've uploaded about a tweet. Search Google for this image. So instead of searching using a term, it's going to search using the image. The dead giveaway is if you have an image that's fake and you go and search for it, what will happen is there'll either be no instances of that photo recorded on Google, or I remember there was a storm up in Queensland. I found this photo and went, good photo. I did a search and it was actually a scanned film photo from 1992. And I scrolled, about the third link was like weather from the 90s in Queensland. So a really powerful extension. If you see a photo, just go right click, search Google with this image, and you can see what that image is about. Or you might find, on the other side, you might find a bunch of pages that go, this is like ABC News or a bunch of other sites going, here's the photo, so you kind of know this is kind of legit. So use reverse image search. It's one of your best friends when you're verifying social content and images. Use Google Maps, Street View and Earth to verify the location of something. Basically, is this what it says it is, and is that where it says it is? In that example of the train crash in Brisbane, what I did is it kind of said, okay, so it's crashed into this station called Cleveland train station, which is kind of, I don't know Brisbane that well, suburb of Brisbane. And I typed in the address of the station, and I got my Google Map view, pressed satellite. I was able to see, okay, so this, let me see if this is my next photo I've got here. No, it's not. Okay, so I was able to see from the crash photo, it's got a red roof. Went to Google Maps, saw that that station has a red roof. Threw onto Street View, went down to where the photos looked like it had come from, and was able to see that it had a certain clock tower element, and that's how the roof went. So it was what it basically says it is. You can use the same thing with a bunch of different photos, wherever it might be from. We've done some examples of stuff in Syria, which is very hard to verify content from, and translated some of the language, and basically gone to Google Maps and says, well, is this photo where it says it is? Can I geolocate that photo to where it belongs? Check the weather is a really obvious one, but if something's just broken, says this is the crash, just jump onto Google and go weather space city and see if the weather matches. In the train example, the photo showed an overcast. See if I can find the photo, because it feels like I'm just talking about something abstract. Cleveland train crash Brisbane. That's the photo. So I was able, that's the red roof I was talking about, and I was kind of checking for that structure. But I did a search and basically said, what's the weather in Brisbane today? And it said it was overcast. Great, okay, cool. Another step that I know I'm kind of getting on the right track. Review the uploader's profile or history. This is not a fail-safe one, but have they uploaded content from there before? Are they a local? Can you and that's actually useful if you kind of go, well, I know you're a local. You've uploaded 6 photos from the area. Can I get you on the phone for a phone interview? can I get you on camera on Skype for an interview? So that last and I guess most obvious step for journalists is to then get in contact with them. If you still have doubts, is this what it says? Is what time did you take the photo? Things like that. Video, kind of similar. Can't read that because I cut it off and it changed all my fonts. Look around the video. So the great thing if you put a video up on YouTube, for example, you have a bunch of metadata that you can use to see what's going on. How many videos have they uploaded? Go and have a look at their channel, click through to their profile. Use Google Translate to find out information about something. So that's another extension that I think is awesome. Basically what happens is, if you have Google Translate installed, it would automatically pop here and ask, hey, this is a different language, do you want me to translate it for you? And it will go through and translate a website. So basically we've kind of removed a language barrier when we're looking for content online. The other thing is, running out of time, so speeding through is if you type a phrase here, text phrase, and translate it, you can hover over words and see what alternative translations are. So that can be really useful if you're trying to verify what is something basically what it is. So that is video, similar to photos. Listen to the content and listen to the audio. Are there unnatural fades in the content is a really good tip. And check against other content sources. You can use filters on YouTube also. So if you go youtube.com and when you search, this is a dangerous one because I want to stop and watch everything. You can actually say I only want content that was uploaded in the last hour. Think about when an event happened and whether there'll be content yet.